This is Scott Becker with the Becker Private Equity Podcast. And again, thank you to our wonderful producer, Chanel Bunger, for being with us today. And also, if you have any questions, topics, ideas for our podcast, comments, you hate it, you love it, I don't care, I'd love to hear from you. 773-766-5322, text Scott Becker. So today's discussion is a government shutdown good for the U.S. or bad, plus 9 other stories that we're following. So here's the issue. The discussion is Goldman Sachs today projects 90% chance that the government will have a shutdown. And the shutdown is going to last a short term or long term, depending on how much ability there is in the middle to find a solution between Democrats and Republicans to keep the government going. There's also this concept of a nuclear option where different legislative tricks or concepts would be used to try and get this passed without Republican support, but challenging to do when the Republicans hold control of the House. So, but is a shutdown good or bad? And here's a couple different issues in this. On one hand, both through Republican mismanagement and, bear with me, Democratic mismanagement, we've run up the debt to a horrible amount, $32 trillion and counting. This makes the country fragile. Most of us know we're on the cusp of some real commercial real estate problems, some real banking problems, and the more fragile the country is, the harder it is to solve those things. So one way or another, somebody's got to get debt under control. Is this government shutdown going to be used for that? Will the Republicans be able to hold the line? Or do we end up in a massive game of chicken between the Republicans and Democrats where nothing's really solved, debt really goes up, and we've not done anything to curtail budget problems? The only time in my lifetime that I saw a shutdown sort of work was when it came out of with sequestration, where just all the government costs that were not essential were reduced by 2% as a way to try and get the budget in line. Of course, that's not a perfect answer, it's not an elegant answer, but something like that's probably the right answer in terms of getting spending under control. In any event, the downside to government shutdown, aside from the short-term loss of government services to some extent, is the bigger issue is right now the U.S. is on a purposeful credit tightening effort, which is causing interest to go up. The real long-term risk is that the rest of the world and borrowers no longer view the U.S. as the best investment for bonds, for safe money. And then we have to pay more money in interest just because we're no longer the preferred viewed as a safe sort of place to invest and put safe money. This would be truly long-term a disaster if the U.S. has to pay astronomical interest rates just to issue debt and keep the government going. So benefits of a shutdown, maybe it's used to get government spending under control. Downside of a shutdown, it really can end up with Moody's, Fitch, and others lowering the credit score to the U.S. and, more important, in reality, leading people to be less comfortable investing in the U.S. and U.S. Treasuries. So those are a couple of the big issues. Is government shutdown good or bad for us? You know, people universally say, oh, it's bad, but I'm not sure that's the case. But there are pluses and minuses. In any event, here's 9 other stories we're following. Stocks are getting hammered, a lot based on this issue, and also a lot just based on rates going up. So that's a real challenge. The next story, Amazon sued by the FTC. Fascinating to watch. It's going to be great spectator sport for a while. Next issue, United Auto Workers, the UAW, bring strikes against the big auto companies. Again, for the first time in a long time, we're seeing the growth of strikes in the country. The writers' strike, the Screen Actors Guild strike. We've got this strike, potentially a number of healthcare strikes. Real challenges out there in terms of this combustible mix between workers, AI, employers, between capital and management, capital and people. What a mess. But the UAW strikes are just an indication of this. And this is a real challenge because the UAW is already paying a lot more for wages than the big EV makers like Tesla. And this will put them even more into a bad spot. The fifth story we're following today, more people going overseas for healthcare. We're seeing more and more of that. Anecdotally and statistically, people going to the Southeast for different types of services, to Mexico for services, people going to Europe for cancer vaccines. a lot of movement, and I think this is an issue as demand and supply balances become worse and worse in the U.S. for healthcare, and you get more and more the supply-demand imbalance where there's so much demand but not enough supply. We're going to see more and more people going overseas for different types of operations, different types of procedures, cancer vaccines, and more. We're seeing it up close and personally. The sixth story we're following today, and I'm embarrassed to follow this story, but I love Bill Belichick's comment on it. There's a great player for the Kansas City Chiefs, Travis Kelce, who has now been dating or linked to Taylor Swift. And the comment I loved about this the most, I mean, obviously, I don't know, obviously, but Taylor Swift, she's a total rock star. People love her. Bill Belichick, the famous Patriot coach, general manager, and curmudgeon, said that Travis Kelce, who's had a lot of great catches in his life, this would be his biggest catch. And he's won the Super Bowl a couple times, so he's also right there. The other thing I'll comment on is Patrick Mahomes. My goodness, as I compare our quarterback in Chicago, Justin Fields, to Patrick Mahomes, it is amazing. They're playing two different sports. It's like me watching Elon Musk as an entrepreneur. We're playing totally different games. It's like me watching Novak Djokovic as a tennis player, totally different games. But that gap between Justin Fields and Patrick Mahomes seems to be similar as it is between me and Djokovic or me and Elon Musk. I mean, these people are playing two different games. Patrick Mahomes is playing the game the right way. The next story I'm following, oil gets up to $94 a barrel. What a debacle for our economy in so many ways. The next story, the one-year Treasury yield crested about 5.5%. That's the highest we've seen that in a long time. Finally, the last story, and I'll take a shot at former Vice President Pence, not for his stand against President Trump. I'll stay off of that subject entirely. The Vice President Pence said yesterday is that he would fire Chairman Powell, Fed Chairman Powell, if he was the president. And this is a guy, swiping at windmills because he's trying to find something to talk about because Pence's stats in the polls are so bad. But this concept of blaming Powell for fighting inflation when is a disingenuous comment or it's a stupid comment or it's both. Government, anybody in government should know if we're running $1 trillion deficit a year on a $27-28 trillion economy, then that right there is about 3% of inflation, right there. Without anything else happening, you're at 3%. The country's at 3 to 4% inflation, and this is with Powell doing everything he can to bring rates up as high as he possibly can without totally killing and damaging and bringing us into a hard landing. So the comment by Vice President Pence that somehow or another Powell's not doing the job right. Yes, I could blame Powell a little bit for, reducing interest rates so low to create a bubble, but I think that's more all the government stimulus, government spending under Trump and under Biden that caused so much of that. Just giving away money, printing money, leading to tremendous inflation. Here we learned nothing. But Pence blaming a guy like Powell is the height of stupidity, the height of disingenuousness. I can't stand it. Just as much as I can't stand President Biden running up the debt higher and higher. I think both are just horrific things for our country. In any event, as we always say, debt kills countries, it kills families, it kills companies, it makes everyone fragile. It's a horrible situation. But Powell's in sort of a box here. He's got one tool to fight inflation, that's interest rates. And if the government is, on the other hand, raising deficit spending like crazy, it's like fighting the wind. In any event, or maybe it's like, I can't say it right. I won't get it right. Sisyphus, who was pushing the sand uphill. I think I've got that right. In any event, thank you so much for listening to the Becker Private Equity Podcast, 773-766-5322. And thank you to our producer, Chanel Bunger. Thank you very much.